Welcome to episode 31 of Books to Last. This episode, our guest is the epic Jan Agaton of the eponymous Instagram and YouTube channel. She shares with us a gloriously dark list of reads to celebrate this year's spooky season. I hope you enjoy it, and for all who observe, I hope you have a most happy Halloween. Hi Jan, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to chat with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the listeners because I obviously know you, but they might not, so it's good to know.
All right, so hi, I'm Jan from Jan Agaton. I'm sure you might have it linked. I don't want to spell it out; it's too much work. Yeah. So that's my YouTube channel. That's my Instagram. I post about books, all different types of genres. I have people know me for like my spooky aesthetic. I've been posting daily on Instagram for years now, and I do social media marketing for a library. So
Awesome dream job. Just so any job in relation to books is just a dream
I
job,
know.
in my opinion.
It's crazy. I think about it every day. I'm like, how am I getting paid for this? Like, this is my career right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something, and I definitely can second everything on sort of the Instagram front because your like aesthetic is just amazing. I just love your entire feed.
Thank
Every
you.
time anything comes up, I'm like, yes, it's very
Thank
distinctive. You know, it's your post.
thank you. That's the goal. Thank you.
Well, what are you reading at the moment? Are you reading anything fun? We are getting into the lead up to the spooky season, the fall.
Yeah.
Any themed reading?
I'm reading my book club pick. It's called The Cosmology of Monsters. Oh, that's another thing I do. I have a book club called the Full Moon Book Club, and
Oh,
it's run pretty much through YouTube. I make the announcements on Instagram, but our live show discussions are on the full moon of every month. And I just did a little full moon readathon because the full moons kept getting earlier and earlier throughout this year. So yeah, but it works out because next year, oh my god, I'm gonna talk forever.
it's
Because
okay.
next year Jordan and I were just talking about like coincidental like happenstances, you know. Yeah, so next year August has two full moons actually. So I'm gonna switch it back to having the discussions the month of the book club pick. So it all works out. Um, I don't know if that made any sense, but A Cosmology of Monsters. I don't know. A lot of people who have read it said they DNF'd or didn't like it. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I'm 120 pages in and it's giving fever dream. Like I don't know what's going on. So it's supposedly about a family who can see monsters, and then some of them, like, they all have different approaches to it. Like, some of them are in denial about it, or just like ignore it. But then, like, our main character like embraces it and like talks to his friends, quote unquote, and stuff like that. So I don't know yet, but
It definitely sounds interesting. I love the concept of doing a book club that sort of, I suppose, works around what the moon's doing as opposed to just like dates because that would be so boring. So why would you do? um,
or
but
would
yeah,
I
that
not
sounds.
let the moon guide me? Like,
Well, I mean, people did it for centuries and it worked for them, so I'm. There's a good reason for it.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, that sounds great. And honestly, don't worry about talking forever. Anyone who's ever listened to the podcast before knows that that's, that's definitely something I do, and that's the whole point of the podcast. That's what we like.
So weird. This is only the second podcast I've been on, and it's so new to me to like know that my face won't be in it. That it's just my audio, so like I can't, like, my facial expressions won't even matter. So
Yeah, when I first decided to do the podcast, I did sort of toy around with doing it either as like a YouTube channel with sort of like as like an interview sort of thing, or as a podcast. And I ended up falling on the way of podcast because only wanted to edit the audio because I knew I was going to struggle with it because I hate listening to recordings of my own voice, or I try not to listen to it while I'm talking, if anything. So I knew I was going to struggle with that anyway, and I was like, the idea of having to edit the audio whilst also edit what I look like on camera would be too difficult for me. I don't think I could cope with both of those. So I was like, I'll just do the one and I'll just do podcasting. But I definitely find that like it is quite funny because I do try to, well, I tend to laugh very quietly or silently while the guests are talking. And I know there are some episodes when I've been editing them and I was like, I was laughing so much the whole way through this, and you can't actually hear me laughing because I was laughing so hard that you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I couldn't imagine. I don't know. I don't know if I'd ever start my own podcast. It's not really my thing personally, but
They're very fun to just guest on, to be fair. I do enjoy guesting on other people's podcasts.
yeah.
So, Cosmology of Monsters is sort of your current read. We are going to get to talk about some books that you're slightly more sure on, that you're very much a fan of. So when we get into your list, but for listeners who don't know, the podcast challenges book lovers from, I think we're literally, I could probably say all over the world now. We've gone to quite a few different countries.
Oh, cool.
To pick the 5 books they would take when cast away to a mystery remote location, and we always let our guest pick their mystery remote location. So where would you, Jan, like to be cast away to?
I was thinking like Scotland somewhere. Like as soon as I see the synopsis of a book that says, "Oh, an island in Scotland" or like a remote whatever in Scotland, I'm like, okay, auto read, you know. So I think Scotland somewhere.
Scotland's a great pick. I a few years ago, in I think it was 2020, I went wild camping in Scotland with my husband and my dog, and
Oh, wow.
it's just an amazing country. We didn't even get to see very much of it because we could only do 4 days. But it was, yeah, amazing. So definitely a great place to pick. What are you thinking building wise? Do you want a cabin or a castle? They do both.
Ooh, a cabin. I'm a sucker for a cabin. Yeah.
So nice remote cabin in the Highlands of Wind and Wilderness. If I can talk, wilderness of Scotland.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
there.
I mean, that's a very sort of can be spooky, can be cozy, can be a lot of different vibes kind of setting. So, what's the first book that you'll be taking with you?
Of course, A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. If anyone knows me, if you've seen any post by me for 2 seconds, I talk about A Dowry of Blood. Have you read this?
I have not. It sounds very
So
a
this is
surefire way to get any book on my TBR list is for someone to say that they pick it on the podcast, because they always end up skyrocketing right up to the top. But sorry, I
yeah.
interrupted. Go on.
No, you're fine. So this is actually I'm holding it up. I know they can't see, but you can see.
I can see.
So this is actually the indie cover, and it just got picked up by Tor. So it's re-releasing with a different, uglier
Ooh.
cover, low-key cover in October. But yeah, so this is a novella, and it's essentially a reimagining of Dracula's Brides, but make it polyamorous.
Ooh.
And polyamorous vampires. There's a threesome scene. And no, my favorite thing about it is the writing, because not only is it like poetic, lyrical, all the good things, but it focuses and like unpacks the like subtleties of toxic relationships. And I haven't, it's unmatched. Like I haven't seen any other author do it the way ST Gibson did in this book. Like it's those, if you've ever been in a toxic relationship, like it's the little microaggressions, it's the little subtleties that like a lot of books just don't talk about, because they talk about the big, like the huge physical abuse, the verbal, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this is like the little things. So love that. I highly recommend.
Well, it sounds fascinating. It's so good that it's so cool to hear that it's been picked up by Tor. I really like Tor and a lot of the things that they produce. They're a really good publisher. I it's only since sort of spending more time, I suppose, in the book community and actually following publishers that I've started noticing threads of like, oh, a lot of my favorite books are published by these different
Right.
publishers, and not these ones. And so it's really cool it's been picked up by a publishing, and then but obviously was like indie published in the beginning, which is really really cool. When you say sort of toxic relationships, do you mean sort of like specifically from a romantic angle, or sort of generally just
Um,
toxic?
yeah, romantic. So the thing about this is that you just kind of know from the synopsis, I guess, and like word of mouth that it's about Dracula's brides, but they
Mm,
never mention his name. So like it doesn't give him that power, the
mm,
power of a name.
mm.
And yeah, so I'm actually rereading this again in October. Or no, this month. I'm rereading this again for the third time. It came out last year and I already read it twice, so if that tells you anything more. I have a canvas print in my bedroom of this cover
Ooh.
because it's stunning. So yeah. Um. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it sounds amazing. I always I mean, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the classic sort of vampire books, but I do find that especially when it comes to vampire romances, it does tend to stray slightly more into romanticizing the idea of, I suppose, toxic and not very healthy relationships. So I think actually addressing them in a slightly um more nuanced way is it sounds really refreshing, because there are many very very famous vampire books that we don't necessarily need to name that do not do that, and maybe romanticize those exact toxic traits that we absolutely shouldn't romanticize.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And polyamorous rep is obviously always really good, because from what I'm aware, I don't think I've ever actually. I think I've read very few books with it in, mainly because I don't think I had really cottoned on to the fact that I think some of the books that I had read, I don't even think I realized that there was polyamorous rep in them, because I just thought it was like, oh no, that that seems correct. I was just like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Um, but I don't really know much about that sort of genre, I suppose, if that's the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And I don't really know if thingy, but it's good to hear when any kind of representation is sort of done well. So,
Yeah, yeah. So to go into it a little bit more, like it talks about like codependency, like manipulation, and just possession
mm,
of, of your partner and stuff. And St. Gibson does a really good job of like showing, not telling. So it's not like super straightforward, but if you get it, if you know, you know. The girls who get it.
mm.
But yeah, so that's a dowry of blood.
A Dowry of Blood, a great start, and I I have a feeling this is going to be a really great list to release in October, which is where this episode's going to come out.
Yeah, it's perfect.
um, so what's the second book that you'd be taking with you joining A Dowry of Blood?
Another one that I never shut up about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Have you read this one?
I have read this one, and
Yeah.
it has been picked on the podcast before by, I believe, Tatiana from the Bookish Banter podcast.
Mm.
Tell me why you love The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue.
So I have 6 copies of this book, so there's that. I've only read it once though, and I tried to reread it, and I haven't made it through the reread. I don't know why, but I don't know. The writing, first of all, it's so lyrical. It's bookish. So if you didn't know what this is about, I mean, I'm sure I don't know where you've been if you didn't know what this is about. But this came out in 2020, and it's about this girl who did not want to conform to like 1700s societal norms, and didn't want to get married or whatever. So she like prays to the gods, and then she prayed like a few minutes into the dark or whatever, and then so the devil was essentially what came down and answered her prayers and gave her. So she was like, I want to live a more full life. And he was like, okay, you got it. But no one's going to remember you. I'm going to give you immortality. But as soon as people like leave the room and come back, they're not going to know who you are. So then you follow her for 300 years. And yeah, you just see how she copes with that. She like steals and gets away with it and like meets all these people, but of course no one remembers her, and it's really a lonely story. I cried. There's a little bit of a romance in there. um and then she walks into this bookstore and finds someone who does remember her, and then that's a whole nother part of the story. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a great concept.
It is a really great yeah, yeah. honestly, I don't know what. It is a really great concept. I um found it really interesting to see how V. Schwab addressed the sort of very practical and logistical difficulties of people not remembering you when they leave the room, because it is so, I mean, aside from being kind of crushing for Addie personally, it is like so inconvenient in every aspect of her life. It is so difficult for her to just exist.
Yeah.
um and yeah, it's a really interesting book. I will say, I read it because I'd seen it all over the internet. I'd heard about it. Every single person I knew seemed to be reading it. They were all crying about it. I don't generally cry very often. So I was like, almost took it on as a challenge, as if to think, is this book going to make me cry? It didn't actually make me cry. And I think it's because I was looking for the bit that was going to make me cry so hard that I kind of missed it.
I feel that I've done that before for sure.
So
Yeah.
it's because I was so like primed and ready to start welling up. I just kind of got to the end and I got to like the last scene and I was like, oh, that's kind of sad, but but I didn't cry about it. And I ended up like sort of posting on my Instagram, just sort of saying, is it me? Am I broken? Is there something not right? Is there a reason why it just didn't? As much as I really, really I did enjoy the story. I found it so interesting. It's one of those books that like I can say objectively as someone who reads a lot of books, it's so well written. It's so well crafted. V. Schwab does such a great job of sort of, I think personally, of meshing the two, I suppose, well, they're not two timelines, but meshing the sort of past and the future and the way she sort of tells the story. And I love Henry very, very much.
Mhm. A lot
But
of people like Luke too, though. Like a lot of people
yeah,
ship her with Luke.
okay, so I like Henry very much because I know I should. Luke is the epitome of the male love interest that I absolutely love, but no, I shouldn't.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I um have grown concerned about my I think I'm so unforgiving in real life when it comes to like morally grey people. But when it comes to a fictional character, I'm just like, yeah, no, go for it. Yeah. Do what you want.
But like, that's the reason why it's fiction. There's a reason why it's fiction.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, I mean, there is like a definite sort of type in the kind of love interests that I really, really like.
Mhm.
But yeah, Henry's very much, even though I tell myself I liked him best because I feel like I should, but at the same time, I think in his own way, he had maybe as many problems.
He has his own issues, yeah. But he's very much cinnamon roll. And Luke is pretty much brooding, bad boy.
Yeah, brooding and not very polite seems to me my type when it comes to.
Right. Oh my god. But yeah, and
uh,
then this also goes, talks about the whole like power of a name thing too, because
mm.
she couldn't write her name, say her name, because no one would remember her. So I like that aspect of it as well. Um, I'm trying to think of the chapters are extremely short, so it goes by super quickly. I think I read this in like a day or two.
I don't remember it taking very long for me to read either. Yeah, I definitely think the power of a name thought I always found really I find it fascinating that as well as sort of taking away people's ability to remember her, he also took away her ability to sort of share her name, which if they weren't going to remember her anyway, it feels like that was just like really twisting the knife
Right.
in.
Right.
It was just like they're not going to remember her anyway, so why would you do something like that? But it's like you say, there's a symbolism to it that is important. I yeah, there was parts of this book that actually probably did really get to me more. I think I was probably more upset immediately after. Yeah, I'd probably put a spoiler warning in the beginning of this episode anyway. But but yeah, the just her coming to terms with the deal that she's made immediately afterwards and some of the things she has to do to get by, I think probably upset me slightly more. Even though I knew they were inevitable, as soon as I realized sort of the true consequences of what she'd done, I was like, no, it feels like this is absolutely where it's going to have to go because like I don't know how else it's going to work in the time period that she's in.
Right.
Um,
Were you
and
shocked by sorry,
yeah, go
finish
on.
your
No.
thought. Okay. Were you shocked by Henry's reasoning of Like why he knew?
So I actually thought it was so clever because I really didn't see it coming until it was explained. I obviously knew that there had to be someone who remembered her and there had to be someone who was different just because I don't like that there was going to be no plot to the book if it just continued to be like just this is how she's lived and then this is how she continues to live and that's the end. So I knew there was going to be someone who's different. I kind of just hoped it was because he was like special. That was probably slightly
Same.
wishful thinking. But his yeah, the reasoning behind that I found really interesting and also really really sad because I found it fascinating that even though he's sort of portrayed as the devil incarnate Luke, he always sort of says like he's not evil, he gives people what they want,
True.
and he's very much just like he's not necessarily on the side of good or bad, he's just sort of almost like chaos energy and he just basically just does, he just exists, he
He's
is.
doing his job.
Yeah, and he kind of like almost chafes against the idea that he's like evil. He's just like I'm not evil, I'm just me. And
True.
um I just think I found that really fascinating. I found their relationship also kind of fascinating because like it's one of those imbalanced power dynamic kind of relationships where technically he's supposed to have all the power, but because of how she's reacted to it, it almost feels like those roles are reversed in some strange way. But it's interest it is a really fascinating book and I really like the characters in it and I like that it is very much focused on those three even though there are sort of support characters and Henry's sort of reasoning and everything behind his sort of character is so interesting as well and also kind of just and also really kind of like achingly sad as well because I mean Addie was angry but I feel like Henry was sad and it just was different.
Yeah. I didn't
But
realize the synopsis says that she meets Henry who remembers her. So that's not a spoiler.
not technically, yeah, not a spoiler.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think the a lot of what I took from the book, I think one of the reasons I think I probably didn't connect or sympathize was with Addie as much as other people did, and not necessarily for a good or bad reason. I didn't really get where she was coming from. I probably sympathized with Henry a little bit more because I think a lot of what she wanted was tied to the idea of legacy and leaving behind a mark on the world. And I don't know whether I'm just like unambitious or whatever, but for me personally, I live my life for me, and I don't really care as long as the people, as long as the people in my life are positively impacted by it. Um,
Fair.
Generally speaking, I'm not looking to get into the history books where it very much felt like that was Addie's burning desire. It's not that she wanted to be famous, it's that she wanted to be remembered, and that's kind of what makes her whole situation so much worse because
That's so true. Yeah.
yeah, she wanted her life to mean something and she didn't want to be forgotten to sort of the annals of time like so many women from her era of history. She didn't want to just be someone's wife and that just be her entire contribution to the world around her. And then yeah, and for me, whereas for me, like I'm like I'm not and I'm just kind of enjoying myself.
Yeah, right. Just vibing. Um,
Yeah.
another what? No, that's not how I wanted to start that sentence. I want to say, um, yeah, another gripe that people have about this book is the whole like whiteness of the countries that she visits. You know, that's
Yeah.
the one thing I always hear from people, which I understand. I totally get. I think there was, well, Addie was bisexual, right? I
Oh
think.
yeah.
Yeah, and then there was like one black character, I believe, maybe one other gay character. So like she tried with diversity, but yeah, she could have done a lot better for sure.
Yeah, the diversity isn't really up there on it, and I don't know whether it's just me because I remember being surprised by that, but not because I hadn't noticed it. When I actually read some of the characters in my head when I pictured them, I think I must have ignored their descriptions or something, but most of them were people of color because I was just like I don't know why. I just like the guy she meets in France in the cafe. Uh
I'm so bad at retaining information. So like honestly, like knowing some of these characters' names is a big
yeah,
plus.
I don't remember his name, but in my head, I definitely think I imagined him as Donald Glover, like 100%. Like that's just who I pictured, and I was just like, And genuinely, I was just like, when got to the end of it, I sort of read the book, and I didn't see any issues with the diversity because I think I inserted it myself, and I don't quite understand how it happened. And then when people were talking about how sort of white the history that she chose to incorporate was, I was like, I sort of sat back and thought about it, and I was like, oh yeah, because I think I was reading things that weren't in the book.
That's so funny. Yeah, because she, 300 years you follow this woman, and it's like she only went to European countries for the most part. So that makes sense
Yeah.
that people are bothered by it. Like, I get it.
Yeah,
So,
so I mean, aside from my brain just auto correcting it because they read it, I was like, no, wrong. And then just and then just like changed it for my own purposes. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, disappointing. I get that the book is only so long, but also it is quite a long book. I feel like there definitely could have been like forays into different eras, and I don't know whether she was going on, I suppose, what's logistically practical. I mean, it was 300 years, but and travel wasn't, I guess, what it was back then, what it is now back then. But like, it feels like she would have at least definitely 100% crossed paths with like, I mean, colonialism like was just like happening, and
yeah,
she just never even sort of kind of. I mean, there's like a brief mention to the fact that like Britain hasn't arrived in France yet, I think.
I don't remember, but
I think there's maybe something like that is not really yeah, it doesn't really address a lot of it, which is disappointing. I think, I mean, I don't think that she would, and she doesn't have to, but I knowing how much that V. Schwab sort of researches her books and how much she sort
Mhm.
of writes, and I do know that she sort of edits a lot of it down because I follow her on Instagram. I feel like she would have like maybe a whole document of sort of additional material for Addie that she wouldn't have made, she might not have used in the original one, which could, I don't know, maybe become a
True.
novella, or sort of like in Throne of Glass they did their sort of anthology of sort of 5 short stories about Aelin before the series started.
Yeah.
So I don't know, something like that, but it's whether, I feel like people definitely would read it because this is a book that people have literally got tattooed on their bodies. Um,
I'm
so
thinking about it. Loki was thinking about it, but
it's a really great. To be fair, the tattoo is a really great, because I didn't connect with the book as personally myself. I haven't just thought, but I did think, oh man, I kind of almost wish that I did, because that's like a bookish tattoo that isn't obviously a bookish tattoo, and I was just like, that is it's a very good one. So yeah,
yeah.
it's great. And I mean, I'm not surprised you own 6 copies because they were all gorgeous. Like every edition that was released was pretty. So
Not this turning into a whole Addie LaRue review.
yeah, so
Move on.
it's tangents of what we're here for. We're here to talk about the books. But yeah, what is the third book that you would be taking with you to add to a book that I think both of them have like majority black covers? So I feel like this is going to be like a very pretty like.
Yeah, they're all black covers.
Hey, that would make a very good stack for book stack
Yeah, I
photo.
almost got my white edition of Addie LaRue, but I was like, oh, let me bring my black one, and then I was like, wait, they're not gonna see them anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
the Illumicrate version with the black with the white flowers is very pretty. It was my favorite of all of them.
Me too. My ex got this for me for like $150, and then some of my friends got it for free, and I was like, okay. Anyway, third book is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This one is not so long of a book either, but it's super dense. It's about this 50-year-old. So you're reading from the perspective of this 50-year-old in prison, and you know from the start that she's in prison, but you don't really know why. But you also know that she's a serial killer, mainly from like towards men, and then but also a cannibal. so
Okay, do
so
go on.
so it reads almost like a memoir. Like I literally had to check one. I had to double check to make sure this is fiction, and so it reads like a memoir. So you go through all the men that she's met, all the men that she's killed, and then she's also a big foodie. So she talks about. So she like takes like certain
Cannibal
body.
that's a foodie. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So
Foodie
she takes.
cannibal. Okay, sorry, go on.
So she takes these body parts and she like makes it into these like delectable like top-notch culinary recipes like
Eight.
yeah so she takes the like I don't want to spoil anything, but she takes this one certain odd body part and she's like, I'm gonna make this into like a chicken cavatappi type of recipe. And I was like, this is intense. Um there it's so messed up. It's so good. The writing is impeccable and like reason I picked up this book in the first place, like I've never heard about this book until I was shelving books when I first started working at a library. Shelving books, I was in the news section, and then I picked this book up because I've never heard about it, and like this cover with the
Mm.
heart, like come on. Um I opened to it randomly. This is how I find like hidden gems. People sometimes ask me like, "How do you find these books no one's ever talked about?" So I open books randomly and I just read a page. And the page that I turned to was chapter 18 and it was titled Hot Dog. And then I read the first page and look at that. The whole almost the whole page is highlighted, right? It talks about like love and it goes into it elaborates on love in all these like profound ways, and I was like, okay, sold. And as like on the clock I'm like buying it on Amazon, right? So yeah, that's how I thought of this book. But um I think it started as an Audible original and then I don't know, but I
Oh
highly recommend this
wow.
one if you're into like that type of horror but also literary fiction with good writing.
Oh, I bet if it's written like a memoir, I bet or if it's an Audible audiobook, I bet that's really good. They do a good job of that kind of style of writing.
Yeah.
I wonder what actress they would have got for a foodie cannibal such as this woman. I I like the idea of, I mean, she's a serial killer, and I like that she's a serial killer of men, and I know that probably sounds
Concerning, but
yeah, I always forget what the word that means the opposite of misogyny, but there's misandry, I think it's called. Yeah, so it's probably I think that's what it's called. Um,
oh, I didn't know there was a
so
word.
it means men hating basically in the same way misogyny means women hating. But I listen to my a past guest of the podcast, Ruby, is on a podcast called Murder Moses, which is sort of true crime podcast where her and her friends chat about serial killers and just murders and stuff and that sort of thing, and they just talk about them and tell the stories from start to finish.
Oh,
And generally speaking, I mean, it's not like women don't murder people. That's absolutely not true. But like, it's usually men,
yeah.
and I I don't know. I think it's interesting to hear. I suppose, I mean, in true equality, that women can be just as awful as men if they really, really want to be. Like, it's equal opportunity serial killing. So, um, yeah, it's great to have it, I suppose, explored from a different angle. And yeah, I would be interested to know what kind of research the author did for this, because
Right.
how do you research cannibals?
Yeah, like I said, I had to double check because it she made it so believable. I had to check if she was I don't remember if she was actually a foodie in real life at the very least. I had to do my research to see if she's actually killed anyone. Like it's intense. It's that good of writing. Yeah, it's a very femme fatale. I never know if I say that
Yes,
correctly.
sort of
Um,
Black Widow kind of.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I that's it. It sounds interesting. I think I would. I'm such a baby when it comes to horror, really. And it would probably give me nightmares. But I'm almost tempted to maybe get the audiobook because I am kind of interested now, because I think the fact that it feels like it could be real is even scary.
True. Yeah, and the twist at the end is really good because I didn't see it coming. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. There's also a wiener
Oh.
dog scene. Not animal abuse. There's no animal abuse, but yeah, the wiener dog scene is one that stands out to me for sure. If you know, you know.
I feel like in a book about a female serial killer who's also a cannibal, and makes different delicacies and foods with the body parts of her victims, I feel like there are some things that were kind of inevitable. There were some things that it was like, well, you've got to try it, haven't you? If you're already down this path anyway.
Yeah. Oh.
Like, I mean, it's a wasted opportunity if you don't didn't at least think about.
I'm crying.
Okay. Um so yeah, very dark sort of horror-y, but also I don't know, like I mean Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I definitely feel like it kind of falls into like a dark sort of spooky kind of fiction just because like I mean the atmosphere of that book is so like that. So I feel like it's got a really cool theme so far. What is the
Yeah.
fourth book on your list?
Okay, so this one, I don't even know how to go into this because I can see how this one is a little bit problematic because, okay, well, let me just go into it. It's Looking for Alaska by John Green, right? Okay. So, I could see the whole like romanticizing depression and smoking and all the things that are in this book. I get it. But this, just personally, from a personal standpoint, this book I read this, I don't know how many times I've reread this, but it's basically shaped me, okay, to who I am today. It when I first read this, it was like early high school, and it just made me feel so seen with how so Alaska's a girl, if listeners don't know. Alaska's a girl. And this guy, Miles, is a very like quirky, awkward, lanky kid, and he goes to this summer school. No, I think it's like it's just a school in Alabama. Um and then he meets this girl, Alaska, and she's very much the opposite of him. She's very reckless, impulsive, does drugs, drinks a lot, like skips class, like all the stuff that he's not. But he's of course extremely intrigued by this woman. And so he he like joins their friend group and everything, and yeah, so it just and then there's a like a so the chapters are like 100 something days before, and then you get to the after part, but you don't find out what before and after means until the second half of the book. And it's honestly really freaking sad. This one made me cry too. And yeah, I felt so seen because of like I was like, oh, it's not just me who copes with things this way or like acts out this way as a teenager. And um and like it just made me feel so validated when I was younger. um yeah, because obviously like I would always get in, not obviously, but my mom obviously would get mad at me when I would get into trouble of any sort. So I was just like, okay, there's a reason, there's a psychological reason behind my actions here. So that's why this book means a lot to me, and I've already reread it enough times to know that I will reread it again on a remote island in Scotland or whatever.
Well, this has actually been picked on the podcast before by our past guest River, and I have not read it because I've not really read any John Green. I tried The Fault in Our Stars and
Oof.
could not get past chapter 7. Um
Fair, very fair.
and I think it's because he deals with sad subjects, and I know he deals with them very well, but I don't deal with sad subjects very well. So I think that's why I avoid him. Although I do think, is it which is the one that Paper Towns?
Paper towns,
I think
yeah.
I watched the movie for that and I thought that was pretty good.
Hmm.
But Looking for Alaska, I've sort of heard a lot about it, and I find, yeah, what you say interesting about I don't think dealing with difficult subjects and also the things that teenagers just do, because a lot of teenagers they just do these things, and I think the idea of pretending that they don't for the purposes of fiction is kind of like ridiculous. The idea that, oh, you can't write about these things because it might give people ideas is just,
Yeah,
stupid, because a lot of people never read books about about these sort of things and they still do them. So
exactly.
like actually digging into them is probably a smarter idea of dealing with it, because I think, I mean, the whole point of emotional intelligence is understanding why you do the things you do. It's not to stop you from doing them. It's if you understand the emotions and the things that make you do things or how you cope with things, it helps you understand yourself better. And then if you want to stop you you can if you want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, so
um
this book actually has gotten banned from a lot of schools, and John Green's a great person in general. I've read all his books. This one is unlike anything he's written, I believe, in my opinion. But this one's definitely like darker than the others, but what was I gonna say? He made a video about like addressing the whole like banning Looking for Alaska and stuff, because there's this one scene he specifically mentions. You could edit this out if it's too provocative or whatever, but he
Don't worry about it.
but he talks about this blowjob scene, okay, and he's like, yeah, I've heard that like people are banning it because of the scene, and it's like, it wasn't me saying that your kids are gonna, I'm telling your kids to give blowjobs or whatever. Like, she wasn't even actually doing the thing. She didn't know how to do it. She just kept her mouth there and had to ask for help from Alaska because she knew how to do it. Spoiler alert. But but yeah, so like John Green was like, yeah, she wasn't even doing the damn thing, and you guys are banning it, and I'm just addressing these things that teenagers do, and like and putting humor to it and whatever. It's a really good
Mm,
video. It's like 3 minutes long. If you just search like John Green Looking for Alaska ban or whatever on YouTube,
yeah.
you'll find it. But
I mean, yeah, I'm surprised that that is the thing that got it banned just
well, I mean, there's
because
there's drugs and alcohol and stuff and swearing and stuff too, but yeah.
yeah, but I mean like if I think about something like 13 Reasons Why, for instance, it's kind of like a lot of people I think books have to become popular for this to sort of happen to them. People like as kids start reading them and enjoying them, and then they come to like the view of adults because I feel like there are so many books, especially in like not necessarily school libraries, but there are a lot of books that are like out there and easily accessible by young people that have got so much more wrong with them. I mean, like I know it's not exactly on the same level, but I mean there is like distinctly harmful things in so much literature that I remember being able to just pick up in my school library that I was just like, really? That's where you're gonna draw the line?
Exactly. Like, no one's
Okay, that's
asking you to put it in your curriculum, you know?
you don't have to
Like,
teach it. It's just there.
yeah, exactly. So,
And
but
also that just sort of exemplifies how much adults forget about when they get older because I not speaking from personal experience, but there is a time when people don't understand how certain sexual things happen or work or to do them. Like, it's not instinctual knowledge you're just born with. And that's like probably really relatable for a lot of people who read things because
exactly.
like it's not just something you know.
Yeah.
um so yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
he he makes a good
I don't
point
know.
there, yeah.
Yeah, people it's nice for people to be seen for even like the negative what people perceive to be the sort of negative or embarrassing or not as good parts of themselves reflected to them in media. Like it's you don't want every character to be some sort of paragon of perfectness and
Right.
um and everything because like no one actually really feel well no one I know actually really feels that about themselves. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. Maybe there is someone out there who does, but no one of my acquaintance is quite so self-deluded. I don't
Yeah.
think. Not even if they tell everyone that they
Yeah.
are.
Very fair.
So looking for Alaska is your fourth. What is the fifth and final book that you'll be taking with you?
I realize now that all of these are white authors, so oops. But Bunny by
It,
Mona. What? Sorry.
I was going to. I think when you're going sort of statistics with a lot of the books out there, I don't think you can be blamed for that necessarily. But
I
yeah, go on.
know. But as you know, as someone who's not white, I always notice these things that I do. But Bunny by Mona Awad is my last pick here. So this one is actually the book that remind like a cosmology of monsters has reminded me of. A Cosmology of Monsters was giving bunny vibes, okay, because of the whole fever dream thing. I don't know if you've heard this book, but
I
there's
have heard of it because
uh
books. Is it Books with Chloe?
uh,
Like she loves this book, and I'm saying that like I know her personally. I don't. I follow her because her content's great, and
mhm.
this book comes up all the time, and it's another book that I just associate with her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think her Patreon's that theme too. So,
Mm-mm.
um, but yeah, so there's like a lot of deeper undertone things in this that people don't see at the surface. I didn't see it on the surface at first. I just read it for what it is at face value. But basically, it's dark academia. This girl, I don't even remember what university it was, but she's in an MFA program, and she meets essentially, it's like it's a very culty group of girls, right? It's basically uh, it's a sorority, okay? It's
Yeah,
basically.
I got that from Colt. Yeah,
I wasn't sure how you felt about that thing, so
we
um
don't have them here.
oh,
No, they are something distinctly American that I would say we don't necessarily understand.
I don't understand, okay. But yeah, they call each other bunny, and honestly, it gets annoying at some point. But like, I don't even know how to explain this. Like, it just feels like you won't know what's going on. To the very end, you won't know what's going on. I will admit, I didn't know what was going on. But it was just such a fun time. Like heads were exploding, like all these random things were happening, and I didn't know why. But then when I watched this review of, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about like the deeper meanings and how it related to writers and how their minds work and things like that. So then I grew a better, a bigger appreciation for it. I've only read this once, but yeah, that's pretty much what goes on. I don't know. It's weird. It's a very weird niche book.
I like the books that people can't explain, I think. I really
Yeah.
enjoy it when someone can't give me a synopsis because I don't read the synopsis for books usually. Like I don't read because I find that it gives it away half the time. So like I tend to go off recommendations a lot of the time, the cover, and then like the author if it's one I've read, someone I've read before, and I just go on that. So and so I find it really, I'm always really intrigued when it's a book that someone's like, you got to read it. You've just got to read it because like I can't explain it to you. It's just trust me. You've got to read it. Um, the
Yeah.
idea of them all calling each other Bunny is just making me remember. So I've never seen the movie Heathers, but I only know
That's
about,
what people compare it to, yeah.
yeah, but I only know about that because of season 2 of RuPaul's Drag Race. Because see, so some of the contestants form their own sort of clique where they all call each other Heather, because of the movie Heathers, and it's a joke that they have, and that's literally the only connection I have to that pop culture reference. Because I love RuPaul's Drag Race, but yeah, interesting. I do find books about sororities quite, because it's just, yeah, it's a different concept. We have like societies in university over here, but they're just
Mm,
like clubs. They're like extracurricular clubs. Um,
okay.
they
Yeah,
don't
I don't
form part
know.
of your identity as much as sororities and fraternities, as far as I'm aware, seem
Oh
to do.
god. Yeah, could never be me. I don't know if it's technically not. It just says a clique of unbearably twee rich girls who call each other bunny and seem to move and speak as one. I don't even know what that means. But but yeah, like it's not, I know it's not for everyone, so I don't recommend it to everybody, but if it seems like something you're into, I would
But
give it a
it's
shot.
it's a it's a vibe. It's
It's a vibe for sure. If you want to
I
be highly confused.
I mean, the people who love it. So there's definitely something going on there, and I think it's strange because it is a very sort of, I would classify it as kind of almost like a girly cover. There's a lot of, it's pink, it's got a bunny on it, it's called Bunny. I just think the
Yeah.
way it's portrayed a thingy, but I remember seeing it, and even when I didn't know anything about it, even before you sort of described it to me, I was like, I know this is a dark book. I don't need to like, you could just look at it and it's just, you read it and you just look at the cover and it's like, yeah, no, this isn't there's something darker going on here, and I can't put my finger on. The
Yeah.
design of the cover is so good because it definitely portrays that without actually
True. It's like
portraying it.
it's like Plain Bad Heroines too, with the UK cover being bright. Is it yellow or pink too? Plain Bad
Maybe.
Heroines. Yeah, with the B. I don't know, but yeah, it gives the same vibe.
Yeah. Well, just for the listeners, do you want to just run through all 5 of your books before we talk about any honorable mentions, just so that they can have the list in their mind if they want to
Yeah,
go and check any of them out?
for sure. So the first one was A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Second was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And then A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. Looking for Alaska by John Green. And then Bunny by Mona Awad.
A very great October list. I think that's honestly, it's as if it was intentional. I mean, it obviously was.
It's
I
just
was
a
like,
natural thing.
I was like, you know who's got a perfect October list that I've never heard of before because she's not shared it with me. Jan knows. I was like, that's who I'm gonna have on that day. Um, so those are your 5 picks. But were there any books that you almost picked or you wanted to pick but didn't for whatever reason?
Yes. So The Secret History was one by Donna Tartt. I know she is also kind of problematic nowadays, but yeah, I can't lie that I can't deny that I like that. I loved that book. It took me 4 days to read a 600-page book that had 8 chapters, and I hate long chapters.
Oh yeah, that there's a long those chapters are too long.
Yeah, ridiculous. It was like 60 to 100 pages. But yeah, that one's also dark academia. You know that there was a murder involved or going on in the beginning, but you don't know who or how. So that was a good concept. Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan was another one. That was on my top 10 of 2021. That one's also very very dark and all about toxic relationships and almost written like a memoir too. That one also made me cry.
I'm
Normal people.
sensing a theme.
There's a theme here, yeah. There's a pattern for sure. Normal people also made me cry. Um, by Sally Rooney. Loved the show. Hated the. Okay. So first, I read this on my phone, and I couldn't get through it because I was new to the whole she doesn't use quotation marks thing. I was like, can't
Ooh.
do it. Yeah. So, but now I've read all her books because I'm used to it. But then I was like, let me just watch the show and see what's up. Watched the show, cried, loved it. And then I'm a Cancer, okay, I cry a lot. And then I was like, okay, let me listen to the audiobook now that I could put faces to names and the audiobook narrator has an Irish accent, so it was a whole thing. Cried again, the audiobook. And then I read it I read it physically this year finally. And yeah, absolutely loved it. So that one's also about a kind of toxic relationship. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna move on. Um,
So I've not read Hit Normal People, but I've heard it because obviously they're making one of her other books into a show, aren't they?
oh,
Conversations with
Conversations with
Friends.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to see. I'm looking at my favorite shelf right now. So to get a splash of color in there, we have The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. That one is a YA fantasy set in Tokyo, I believe.
Ooh.
And she's this Japanese Shinigami, half Japanese Shinigami, half British Reaper, and it's like a whole like identity, biracial identity thing. But like that's one of the very few fantasies that I could like visualize things. I'm a very bad visualizer when it comes to books, and I don't know what it is, but there's a there's a name for it. It's called aphantasia,
Mm-mm.
but like also those people apparently like can't dream, but I dream all the time, so I don't know what it is. But but there's that, and then Open Water by Caleb Azumah Nelson. That one's super short, super quick, very poetic, and sad ending. I think I cried too. And yeah, it explores love really well, and it's a very simple story, but it hits for sure. So those are my runner-ups.
I find the concept of like just what you said about visual, I find that really interesting. Just because, so I can't do that when I'm reading. When I'm reading like physically, when I'm looking at the words, like I see the words, and that's kind of enough. I almost don't need sort of the images. But when I'm listening to audiobooks, podcasts, anything like that, um, I can visualize stuff really easily because it's almost as if like my eyes are free because I'm using my ears instead. So then
Yeah.
I still sort of I'm quite a sort of visual person in terms of like I use my hands a lot. You have seen during the recording I talk with my hands, but I find that really interesting because I can't do it when I'm reading like
Basically.
words, but I can do it when I'm listening to things.
Neat.
So that's, yeah, sounds really interesting. And those seem like really great books to also check out if people wanted to. Um, as honorable mentions, if listeners wanted to come and hear more recommendations about more books that may have made you cry and
Girl.
and had other themes in them, but also books that don't, because you know there's range. Where could they come and check out your recommendations and reviews?
So Jan Agaton is my channel, Agaton. There you go, I spelled it. And then yeah, also my Instagram. I just have one, like I don't have a separate book club Instagram or anything. So those are mainly where I post. I do have a Goodreads, but those are linked in my like video descriptions. And I'm trying to. I haven't kept up with my blog, so forget it. but but yeah.
Well, that's really great. I recommend everyone go and check Jan out. Like I
Thank
say, I
you.
love her Instagram. It's great.
Oh,
So yeah, go check it out. And if you want to check out the podcast, we are wherever you're listening to it now. So wherever podcasts are found, we're also on YouTube. Because I know some people prefer to listen to their podcasts on YouTube. And we are at Books to Last Pod on Twitter and Instagram, although I am not using Twitter at the moment because
mm,
I spent 5 minutes on it yesterday and it reminded me why I don't use Twitter anymore.
fair. Yeah, I just made a new one because I locked myself out of my old one. I didn't even know book Twitter was a thing until like this year. So I was like, let me just make a whole new one.
Yeah, book Twitter was like my intro to the book community, I think. I sort of did blogging and then it was book Twitter that sort of was my first foray into the social media aspect.
Mm,
And book Twitter's amazing. It's just the fact that you have to come into contact with the rest of Twitter to get to it is the problem.
that's so true.
Um, I literally spent all of 5 minutes on there and I think I saw, I don't even remember, I think I've blocked it out of my mind. It was just a post about something and I was just like, there's
Mm,
a reason I don't come on here anymore. So
right.
yeah, they're auto posts over there, but you can follow the podcast because the podcast posts there even if I don't. And yeah, Instagram at Books to Last Pod. So yeah, go check us out, go check Jan out, and thanks for listening, folks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been so much
I had
fun.
so much fun. Yeah. Thank you.
And yeah, I hope everyone is having a great, still having a great autumn slash fall wherever you are in the world, whatever you call it, spooky season, whichever. And yeah, until next time, bye for now.
Bye.